Hey everyone, and welcome to the Salad by Patty members only July phone call. And I'm so excited to be talking to you today with my lovely friend Bethany. We have a lovely story of how we met and how important she was to me at that time, and how she stayed very near and dear to my heart for how she helped me and my family in Nolan. And she's just like the magical person you would want with you when you're going through stuff with your baby. And she's has beautiful children. We're just talking about all the loveliness with having little babies and sickness and just trying to juggle it all. And she also launched her business, which is like pediatric sleep consulting, which is, I think everyone should be doing it. It's a really good way to empower moms and parents to kind of like navigate the sleeping stuff. We were just talking about the sleeping stuff with my Nolan. That's always been a little challenge. So Bethany, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything you'd like to tell us what you got going on right now? Are you drinking wine? Are you relaxed? Are you like
Oh my
done
God.
with bedtime duties? Bedtime
I,
routine is over.
well, I want to say two things. One, I loved working with Nolan and you, and I always would see you come in these outfits, and all of us clinicians would look and say, "Oh my gosh, it's the really fashionable mom." And so we always loved that. And then also, you just have such a wonderful, warm, and welcoming presence. So I always appreciated that. I'm not drinking wine, though I did have a glass earlier,
There you go.
right when I got all the girls down. So I have three kids. uh 2 and under. So I have a 2-year-old, and then I had twins. So I have a 2-year-old and two twin girls that are 6 months old. My husband's in the military, so he was not home tonight. He's getting home any minute. And so I did this wild bedtime routine solo. So I felt like I deserved a glass of wine.
Of course. Of course. How long, what's the average time for your like the bedtime routine?
So one of the reasons why I really got into sleep consulting was when
There's
my
Hannah.
hi when my daughter Austin was born. She had a horrible, she was a really colicky baby. I worked with newborns and with babies at Cranial Technologies as an occupational therapist and clinician, which is where I met Patty. And I thought, okay, well, I've been around babies all the time. I feel like I know babies inside and out. And then my daughter came along, and all of these issues that I was trying to help other moms with and dads with, like, flat heads and sleep issues. And all of a sudden, my daughter had all of it. And I felt kind of,
Really?
yeah. And I just felt like, oh my gosh, everything I'm trying to tell parents, and here I am, and I'm dealing with all of these issues. What have I been telling parents that's actually helpful? And what have I been telling parents that might not be helpful now that I'm in this boat? How would I want to be treated and navigating all this? And so that's sort of when I really delved into all of this. And so to the long-winded answer to your question is I feel very lucky that I have, three kids under two or 2 and under, and they're all in bed asleep by 7:15. And that allows me to feel like I can have some freedom and
Yeah.
just time, which I desperately need. So, anyways, that
Yeah.
was a very long-winded answer.
No. And what time are you like passed out?
Uh, if I could be passed out by 8 o'clock, I would.
I
And I
know.
think I'm pretty sure that every mom has that dichotomy or balance of, okay, I have all my children in bed. Do I go to bed, or do I finally have this freedom
Yeah.
that I can be myself and I just want to sit and watch a show or
Yeah.
a book
Yeah.
or just do something?
Yeah. You kind of go like, I have time. What does one do with time? Do I do
Yes.
laundry? Do I get on my phone? Do I watch reality TV? Do I get into a show? Do I go to
Yes.
bed? Do I read in bed? Do I journal in
Yes.
bed? It's just like it becomes so overwhelming. And then what I notice I do, I just end up watching comfort shows and watch like Game of Thrones for the 100th time because it's like I don't have to think or anticipate. And then I'm just kind of like, oh, it's time to go to bed now. And it just feels like you end up wasting time, precious time, and you just
Yes.
didn't know how to use it.
Yes. It's like
And
a
so
paralysis.
we'll try again tomorrow. Like,
Yes.
and tomorrow's obviously not going to go the way you planned it. So,
I
yeah,
know.
yeah. So, I know you talked about it a little bit, and one of the questions I wanted to ask you before we got into how we met, um, was, so what was it that you like, why help babies? So like, you know how doctors come along and they're like, I want to
Mm.
help, like, neonatal type of person. I want to be like for teenagers. I want to be for like, so why were you like, I want to work with babies?
It's a really good question. So I started my career as an occupational therapist in inpatient adults. So at, a level one trauma center and working with adults. And I always gravitated to the pediatric patients. But one of the reasons why I really liked working with babies, well, and then I transitioned to pediatrics when I moved to Virginia in 2018. And I loved that transition because I really liked the dynamic of the parents. You kind of get both. When you're working with adults, you're just working with the adult. When you're working in pediatrics or with infants, you're working with families at this really vulnerable time in their life. And I know for me as a mom, that was probably one of, if not still is, the most vulnerable place of your life is your children. And to be able to work with families in that space felt very rewarding to me of
Yeah.
how can I help with this and how can I, you know, be a part of it with them and then also be able to love their kid. I, genuinely love these kids. And so
Yeah.
it's fun to be able to love their children and then also, you know, have a rapport with the family.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, you are like the perfect person. Like you fit into the occupation you were born to do, because when I went in there, um, so I guess like you can jump a little bit forward about how you and I met. So when Nolan was about like, how old was he? Maybe like five or
I think
six
he
months.
was, yeah, I think he had just turned 5 months.
Yeah. And we had noticed he had like a really flat head in the back. And like, I was just kind of, you have that moment as a mom, you're like, well, let's see, is he gonna develop? Like, am I worrying about this? And then, you know, uh, I start kind of panicking. And then I asked the doctor I think it was like around 5 or 6 months, because we went to I think the 6 month one checkup. And the doctor was like, well, go to cranial technology. I recommend them, and let's see what they say. And I was so happy now in retrospect that it was you, because from the beginning, you were so kind and like really like had to handle me with like kid gloves, because it's very vulnerable and like
Yeah.
very raw thing of
Yeah.
like, something's wrong with my baby. Like, is something wrong? And then it's like, yes. And then let me show you how and why. And it's not your fault, which is like, what I admire about you is like how you navigate that, because in my mind I'm like, okay, this person's judging me, okay, like maybe I left him napping too long, and maybe I didn't turn him too much, and maybe this, maybe that, and you're showing me like from like the scientific point of view of like, this is where development happened or is late or is lagged, or maybe it's this or maybe it's that. Um and I mean, Nolan loved every minute of it. He was not a fussy baby at all. He's just kind of like going with the flow. um and so for that, like, you'll always have a special place in my heart, because that was a very tender time, and you walked me through it very well. And even like the exam part where you have to put like that
Hmm.
pantyhose over his head, and like, just all of that. I mean, I'm just trying to hold it together, and then thinking like, this baby's gonna freak out, like this baby's gonna like, what is he looking at, what is he doing? And all of that went like flawlessly. Um, I I didn't have any expectations, because I was just so more about myself, like failures as a mom, and this is why I'm here. Like, I've got myself here. How am I gonna, my kid? How did I do this to my kid? Um, but you were like just at the perfect times to say the the comforting things of like, no, it's gonna be okay. And like, here's the helmet, and here's how we're gonna maintain it, and this is how we're gonna do. And I really liked going to the checkups, because it was a good like point of like, am I doing this right? I'm learning from this. Okay, this is adjusting, and seeing how like it is progressing, right? Um, and I trusted you. I didn't feel like you were judging me, and I didn't feel like you were like, Nolan and I were just another patient, like we were just another group of people going through your door. You really did like take care of us and like be happy for our progress. And when I said I think we could go a couple weeks more, you're like, yeah, I think let's go 2 more weeks. Like, you and I were very much like a team, um, going through that. And it was like you haven't met my husband, but I talk about you all the time, and I'll tell like people, I'm like, oh, it's like Nolan's clinician. Like I still talk to her. He's like, it's wild that you have friendships with people and keep them, and you like, and you meet them in these situations, and then have these long-term friendships with them. And it's like because I just found you like your energy was so good, and it was so patient and calm, and just like for moms looking to like seek help in consulting on like sleeping or breastfeeding or any of those lovely topics, or if you're seeing like something in your baby that kind of makes you a little nervous, um to ask someone like you. That's why I wanted like to collaborate with you to promote your business, because you are like, to me, the perfect person that will just like handle the parents questions and concerns with like a lot of like love and care and patience. um and it's not that I'm like blowing you up. It's because like I sat there with Nolan and went through this thing, and I saw a lot of parents coming and going. And I remember you telling me that sometimes there were parents that were like not happy and not really listening to what you were saying, and kind of internalizing and taking it personally that these things are happening, or maybe that you didn't leave the helmet on long enough. And a lot of people will have another reaction where they're still so vulnerable and they take offense to anything you say, right? Because I think one time I went in and you were kind of like down, and I'm like, what's wrong? And you were telling me that somebody was not nice to you, and I'm like, well, how can they not be nice to you? Number one, and number two, I get it. It's a vulnerable time for a parent. It's just very vulnerable. So how do you navigate when someone's kind of snapping at you the whole time you're in that room with them?
It's a great question. I think that for me, I also gained immense I already had a baseline of huge empathy, but then having my daughter and what you just said about, did I do something wrong as a parent?
Hmm.
When it's a head shape, it's an outward thing that you're looking at, and it can feel very extra vulnerable
Yeah.
because you have this child that you love so much, and someone's looking at them and saying, hey, something's not right here. And it feels like they're saying, hey, you did something not right.
Yes.
And that feels really, and I don't think I quite understood that feeling until
Hmm.
having a child and seeing her head shape, not, from being in utero. And here I am with all of this knowledge, a plethora of it, knowing, okay, well, I know why her head is like this. She was low in my pelvis. I know why these things, but I'm looking at her now. And luckily, I knew exactly what to do to remedy it, which is why I
Yeah.
started the business of sleep consulting, and in addition, the occupational therapy aspect of it too. But even then, I would think to myself, okay, I'm telling parents to do XYZ. That's not even realistic. I have this crying, colicky child. What I'm telling people to do to not have a helmet isn't even realistic. I need to revamp this, and I need to find another way to keep my baby out of a helmet.
Yeah.
That being said, I think I also would have 100% put my daughter in a helmet if she needed it, since I had worked in that situation and bought it, and I really bought into it, and I believe that it works, and I know it works. But
Yeah.
I think that I really increased my empathy, and also just recognizing that you never know what someone is feeling vulnerable about, and you just have to understand that when people are snapping or frustrated, that you just don't know. And likely it has nothing to do with you, and it has
Yeah.
everything to do with whatever insecurity they have at the moment. And I am the first person to also have that reaction or that experience too. So I think just having the understanding that you just don't know what other people are going through, or where in parenting other people find vulnerability.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a it's like a very tender spot, and you just don't know what the trigger will be that you feel like defensive, right? Like you get defensive and you're like, I'm already here. I'm like paying for this. Like this is gonna be so, I didn't know what I was walking into. And there was a level of with walking Nolan around. And we didn't tell anybody. I wasn't posting about it. Like none of my family knew, because I felt shame. I felt shame. I felt like it was a sign of like failure. Um, of like we didn't take care of him enough, or like we didn't like I was too tired and I let him sleep for another hour. I shouldn't have done it. You just start beating yourself up, when instead of just like I had you and like the technology we had, and we were doing everything we needed to do to get him to a good place, right? And I think now maybe the helmet was too good because Nolan hits his head so many times that I'm like,
It just
man, that thing's like iron now. It's a
you
cast
know,
iron head now.
I think you make a great point though when you talk about justifying. And I think as moms, especially, we almost always feel the need to say to someone, well, it's because of this. I shouldn't,
Yeah,
I was so tired, or, I have twins, and instead of just knowing that, I'm pretty sure for the most part, at least for me, I just go around at baseline assuming that someone is a good mom, and I don't need them to justify to me that they are a good mom. I assume that they are a good mom. And I think that that's something we could all benefit from, is assuming that someone else believes we're a good mom, and that we don't have to say, well, I didn't do this because I have XYZ, or I wish I could have done this, but I have this. And trying to kind of almost make this point of, I really am a good mom, when
Yep.
yes, you are a good mom. And I think that's another thing, is I would go into every appointment, and I still do, just assuming that that parent and that mom or dad is a good parent. And that's why they're there, because they're
Yeah.
concerned about their kid, or, you know, so I kind of just have the assumption that if I'm talking to a mom, she is a good mom.
Yeah. See, and that's good. That's like the type of um the ideal scenario for a mom walking into to something like this. They're just walking to a place where it's like it's a safe place. Let's work this problem together, judgment free, and like the end result is like happy, healthy baby, and like, and it was nice that like when at the end and like a little ceremony, like when he got his little helmet off, a little
Yeah.
certificate and everything, and it was kind of like like we're free, and he looked great.
Yeah, good.
And
He
I'll
made
even
he
I'll
did
like I still
awesome.
have the pictures and I'll send that to the group just so you guys can see the huge difference between before and after. And it was about 9 weeks, a little bit after 9 weeks, and it was incredible. And I don't like it was one of the best decisions we've made for him, like, and I remember you and I talked about like what it could look like as he grows, and these are factors you have to take into account. And you were even talking to me in a way of like, if you don't choose to do this, then this is what it could be. But, and even then, if there's parents out there who become reluctant and they don't want to, you were also very much still keeping it even tone of like, okay, well, if that's what we want to do and talk it over. And you never came off as like judgy or like, God, you're making a mistake. Your kid needs this. I didn't get any of that from you. Um,
Good.
and I know, and like I would want every single person in this profession and dealing with like new moms and moms with tiny little babies and all that to have the same kind of energy and like work ethic as you, because it's a very, very touchy subject. Like you're walking on landmines to discuss this. So it's something that it I want a lot of people to know about you, because I know some moms that have like older babies and tiny babies, just had babies. Um, and had multiple kids, and you're just trying to keep up, and then you notice like one kid's looking different than the others, and you're just trying to like, okay, well, where can I go, safe space, and just inquire like, hey, what are my
Totally.
options?
Totally. And I feel like so much of the things, and I don't, maybe I'm alone in this, I don't know, but I think so much of things with our kids, when you're in the chaos of life, all of a sudden it feels like something appears out of nowhere,
Yeah.
where you are just in, a chaotic environment trying to get by. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, is that a flat spot? I didn't even notice that yesterday. Or, oh my gosh, we've been 10 nights with these really hard nights. How did we get off track from this sleep? We were in a good place. And now all of a sudden, you know, this happened, and or we went on vacation and we never got back in a groove, and whoa, what habit are we in now, and how did we get here? And I think so much of that is then all of a sudden you look back and you kind of can't figure it out. But I think that's also really normal, because we're all trying to do so many things
Yeah.
so much of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a big one, because we're just like Nolan is like boycotting naps now, and and can also stay up till midnight. And so you're just trying to navigate that, and you're also thinking this child's not getting the proper care, he's not getting the proper sleep, he's going to be tired, he's not eating, he's this. And we came back from a vacation, and the routine that we had was like shot. And even now with my daughter just being at home a lot, maybe a summer camp for 1 week and then back to like sleeping in and staying up late, like he's totally off. everything. And so it kind of makes you feel like, oh God, like there, I can't get back to the sweet spot. It's like it never, it's like, have you ever seen anybody go back to a sweet spot, or you just kind of adjust to the new
That's a good
thing?
question too. I would say yes. I've definitely seen people go back to the sweet spot. It just takes effort and consistency. And then depending on the age of the child, when it comes to sleep, that's
Yeah.
what I'm speaking of now.
Yeah.
It a lot of it, especially around toddlers, is being so consistent and then staying with the consistency. And they are little mind ninjas. I can even just see my little over 2-year-old picking up on these little nuances or learning how to protest things or putting
Hmm.
on the charm, or all of a sudden at bedtime she's not a cuddler at all, but then at bedtime she wants to snuggle. And
Yeah.
so I think a lot of it is you can definitely get back in the sweet spot, but also you kind of have to know like what you're up against and then how to speak their love language and pour into them what they need, so that way you can kind of get everyone back on track. But by no means is it okay, we're just going to let them cry it out now, or we're going to just do this. A lot of it is tactful on your part in, okay, how can I kind of outsmart my child, get them back
You're the
on track?
adults here. Like, why? Who's running the
I
show?
know.
Like they're terrorists. They're tiny
They
little
are.
terrorists.
Yeah, I
Yeah, they
actually,
really are. They will like run you over.
yes, I said to my husband, I am terrified of our daughter,
Yeah,
Austin. I have to give myself pep talks like, okay, I'm in charge. I'm in charge.
she doesn't own me. She doesn't
Yeah.
own me.
Yeah.
It's like, so Nolan has this fever right now, and he was napping on the couch, and then like Alan and I were coming down here to start like fixing up this basement, doing all this stuff. And Nolan wakes up and he's cranky, and we're like, yeah, he hasn't been feeling good. And he proceeds to cry for like 45 minutes straight. And I tried everything. Do you want water? Do you want like vitamin water? Do you want a popsicle? Screaming, screaming, screaming. And then he got into like Alan couldn't look at him. Like Alan would be like, hey buddy, are you okay? And he looks at him, and then Alan's like, watch, watch, watch. Nolan. And then Nolan looks at him and starts crying. So he's into a thing right now where he was vulnerable and just you couldn't look at dad. He didn't want water, food, nothing. He just wanted to cry it out. And that's it. So we just let him cry it out. And we're like, Nolan, if you keep this up, you can go do that in your room if you want. And then Alan's like, how about I go take a bath instead? And he just kind of like, Nolan just took a breath. He was like, okay. And then went up, we just kind of had to write it out
Yes.
because he's sick. He's not feeling well. And we're all like, okay, guys, let's just bring it back. He's sick and he's not feeling well. But hurry up and get him in that bath because he needs to calm down.
Yeah, and it is really hard when they get in those intense tantrums where you just think, okay, I just have to let this one run its course.
Yeah, that's really hard.
Yeah.
That's really hard, especially like if you're tired and you're like, okay, why is this happening now? And how long is bedtime routine going to take? And sometimes I remember with my daughter, it was like an hour and a half of me just laying there in bed with her. And if I was to like even move, she'd wake up and then we'd have to go right back to like book and, calm down, go to sleep. And I was like laying on a stick of dynamite. Like I couldn't move until I could hear her like full snoring. Um, that's just, yeah, it's never, I don't think we ever got back to a C spot. Now, like my daughter is like, she's out. Nolan, if we can catch him in like a solid 8 hours, he's out for those 8 hours. But to get him to sleep is a big challenge. A big challenge. What do you recommend for someone like my kid who has like a ton of energy?
So there's a couple things because Nolan's what,
He'll be
a
3 in
year older
October.
than Austin? Or yeah, I was gonna say a little less than a year older than
Yeah,
Austin.
yeah,
Um, okay, so for him, I would say if if I were to take Nolan and figure out, what I would say is that in an ideal world, even if Nolan doesn't nap, he would have some sort of quiet rest time, ideally between 1 and 3. It doesn't have to be
yeah,
the whole time, but ideally between 1 and 3.
yeah,
Maybe sometimes he would fall asleep and maybe sometimes he wouldn't. But either way, there would be some rest time there. And the reason being is that we have different times in the day where our melatonin levels peak a little bit and where our circadian rhythm is kind of in sync. And so that time for his age and for Austin's age is at the peak time during the day where
okay,
that kind of kicks in.
yeah,
So then if he were to take a little rest or a nap, ideally that would go 1 to 3, but no later than 3-ish.
yeah,
And then from 3 until, like 6:30-ish, you do your normal thing. And then around 6:30-ish is when you would really start the wind down routine. And I know a lot of people say like no screens, no whatever. I'm not, I mean, we're just trying to survive over here.
Yeah.
So we, Austin, my daughter, will watch a little Daniel Tiger or
Yeah.
Kokomo or something before bed. And that's part of her wind down routine. And we'll
Yeah.
do bath with the babies. But for her, sometimes she does a bath and then she does a little bit of a show. And we do a couple books and a song and bed. So for Nolan, I would say because this would be a huge change from his norm, you would really talk up sleep. So as, crazy as this sounds, you would have a little family meeting where you would sit him down and you would say, okay, we're going to do this really cool new thing around sleep. And you could even make a reward system around it where you would talk about, okay, you're going to make a really big sleep. This is going to be so exciting. If he has a stuffed animal that you want, you would really ramp up that. Okay, who do you want to have sleep with you tonight? You would do this. You would even have him pick out which reward he wanted in the morning. It could be as simple as like a red Fruit Loop or whatever it is that makes him feel excited.
Mhm.
And then throughout the day, one thing that's really important, even though it sounds very small, is really talking up the positive talk around sleep. So really, ramping up, okay, tonight you're going to do this, or you did a great job last night. We're so proud of you, and talking about how great sleep is and how you sleep and just really making positive associations with sleep. And then in an ideal world, he would go to bed no later than, 7:45, 8 o'clock in as far as that's when his melatonin levels would peak is before 7:30. And
Okay.
it's and then after about 8 o'clock, cortisol starts to kick in really high. So
Yeah.
then
I
so
can see
then
when
you
that
get in,
happens.
yeah, so then you get into that really, and even still, I noticed with my daughter, if we don't get her down at her sweet spot, then we're screwed because
Yeah.
she's protesting, it's just going to be horrible. And so you really kind of have to hit that sweet spot. And then if you're really, really consistent, typically with toddlers, you start to see really significant improvements between 7 to 10 days where you see really, really, really good progress if you're consistent because they start to ramp up all the tactics and tricks
Yeah.
um, and then the other thing I would just ask is he in a crib or in a toddler bed?
He's in a big boy bed.
So that adds, so then if you, let's say you try this and he's totally off the walls, then there are different methods when a child is in a bed versus a crib that you would kind of do to help be consistent with boundaries.
Okay.
I don't know if that was a really long-winded answer, but maybe they're listening
We're
that
gonna
have
try with the talk up because
toddlers. Yes.
we will say like sleeping now, and he'll be okay, or he'll be like, no, no. Like it's like he's pondered and his answer is no. So we try to like, grab these little things and um have books involved and like always two storybooks before he goes to sleep and try and do that. But I'll try starting to like catch him around like start the
Yes,
process at
and just
6:30.
really start to wind it down. Also with
Yeah.
Nolan, and I mean, I haven't seen him in a year, but I feel like he's wild, but he's also has a chill demeanor too. So I
Yeah.
feel like he also has a really calm, sweet demeanor too. So I feel like
Yeah.
if you put him in that sweet spot, he'll be so receptive. It's when he goes from that sweet spot to the other side where you kind of lost him. But
Yeah.
he has a really sweet, beautiful temperament.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. He's not all like,
No,
we
he's
joke
not
with
on
like
what
his little
he has,
we
yeah.
we joke with him that like he has these like little things on his sides. We're like, that's where your horns used to be, but they're gone now. We're like, remember the helmet? Took those away.
Yeah, the little Urions that he had. Oh, that's really cute.
Some helmet humor, but like we just like, man, that helmet did more. Like, thought you to where you needed to be, but woo, it's that hard head now. It like solidified that thing. Oh my goodness. So have you like kept up with like patients or like have you seen um like a big like something that was like a very big drastic like change, like something that was a very severe case? Like I didn't consider mine as to be severe, but um
Yeah.
something that you really remember that really resonated with you.
So, yes, there's definitely cases that really resonated with me. Some who did well, and when it came to helmeting, some who did well, and then others who maybe didn't. didn't wear the helmet or didn't like it. And
Mhm.
then honestly, so one thing that I do currently is try to help reposition babies out of needing a helmet, but there's a pretty small sweet spot where you can do that from
Mhm.
0 to 4 months. And I think something that can be a little hard is that a lot of doctors are totally fine recommending a helmet, after 6 months,
Yeah.
but not a lot of them really try to get you the intervention of, "Hey, if you really sought out help from an OT or a PT who specializes in plagiocephaly and flathead syndrome, and you really got the tools needed to learn how to reposition and what goes into it to avoid a helmet or make you in a better place if you needed one," that would be a great um, educating tool that I think is a little bit underutilized.
Yeah.
And so when I think about a pretty severe case, I actually think of my own daughter who um, we ended up repositioning. I should send you the picture so you can attach it to this
Yeah.
because she had a pretty significant flattening. And we were able to really reposition it, because I caught it when she was really early.
Yeah.
Whereas oftentimes if you go somewhere, a pediatrician will say, yeah, well, just keep an eye on it and it will round out. Well, no, oftentimes there's some underlying neck tightness or there's some underlying, in uterine components that you can actually address while the head is still soft and you have that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, I don't know if that,
Yeah. Well, you learn. It's good that you caught it. I mean, that's a very lucky that you were able to do that and kind of get
yeah.
to it, you know what I mean, before you had to take it to the helmet um type of situation. And so let me see here. So I did want to we had another big question.
I
So
just want
what
to add
is the
that
yeah.
real quick that even for me though, who knew exactly what to do and had been armed with the knowledge of years of doing this for other people with a helmet, still felt totally overwhelmed and all of the guilt and all of the challenges and all of the feelings that everyone else has. And I knew what to do. So I think I could also really appreciate how I had all this knowledge and I knew what to do and I still felt these things, how
Hmm.
people who had never even heard of plagiocephaly, how magnified that could be for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, 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 no. Like this is important for people to hear because again, like me walking in and you being there, it's like already like, okay, I feel like this person is judging me and like being the mom on the other side of that. And then you being on the other side, right? Like first you're the provider and now you're take caretaker and you're on both sides of this. And so it could be humbling and at the same time you're like, okay, now I know like I've been in people's shoes, I've been on both sides of it and you've seen it and kind of see if there's people that come in with different situations. You're much more adaptable um, to catering to what you see in front of you. So, what are like the main services that you provide with Well-Rounded Baby?
So currently I provide sleep plans. So basically I would, you know, listen to you or whoever and hear everything that they're going through and then create a customized plan. So I know a lot of people use taking care of babies. So a lot of it would be, it's a different approach to that. But that type of thing as far as here are the issues you might face, here's what's age appropriate, here's what's not, except more tailored to that specific person and what that specific person's lifestyle is. And then typically it's quite a long plan. It's, 4 or 5 pages going through exactly what to do. And then I check in with some people do it differently, but I like as you know, once I have a client, I like to have a really good rapport and relationship with them. And I'm not someone who's going to say, okay, you can email me once and I'll tell you what to do. It's like, okay, no, once we're working together, I want to be able to have you feel like you can message me and text me and say, hey, I'm running into this. What do I do? Or, hey, this is happening and I'm not really sure how to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Should I go in? Should I change this method? Should I do this? What time should I put my child down to bed? A lot of the biggest challenges, especially in the first, after 4 months, from 4 months, even until, 1 or 2, is trying to figure out, okay, how do I know when to put my child to bed? If my child fell asleep on the car ride home, how do I adjust to this? And so
Yeah.
um, I offer sort of varying levels of uh, time periods of support between, a week of all the support to a month, depending on what a family needs. And then I also do virtual evaluations of head shapes and analysis and try to provide unbiased opinions on should a child, if they're beyond repositioning, is it worth getting a helmet or going through somewhere like cranial technologies? Is what that parent is concerned about going to be fixed with a helmet? Is it going to be corrected? Or is the parent really concerned about something that's not even a concern? So
Right.
often, I think you can go somewhere and they can say, oh, you need a helmet, when in reality, maybe what the parent is seeing is not something that the helmet would address. So,
Hmm.
really trying to provide, okay, yes, this is a case where I would totally recommend that. And this is why, and this is what it could or couldn't do. And then for children who are younger than 4 months, really working with them on repositioning and addressing neck tightness, talking about torticollis, rotation preferences, what muscle strength, what muscle groups might be more imbalanced, and how to remedy that, and exercises to provide to make repositioning easier and more effective.
Yeah. I think that like I'm so happy that you launched this for yourself because it's going to help a lot of women and moms and parents who are just, they get that recommendation from the doctor and then you're like you would just want like that meteor person, that one person in the middle
Yes.
to be like, "Hey, let's talk about it," before you get thrown into that office and then you're given, okay, it's going to be about like 800 $900 and you're going to do this, you're going to do this, and it's all overwhelming as it is, and to have someone like you to be like, okay, well, let's talk it through before you make
Yes.
a decision like that. And I was very lucky with you that you were very genuine of like, these are the options. But someone else can walk in there and be like, oh, you're just trying to like get my money. You're not listening to me, that I'm concerned about this instead of what you're telling me about. So having someone like you to be in the middle of like, before you go there, come to me and let me give you some more information and let's try these things is so helpful. I it's going to be, I know it's going to be like huge. I'm going to be your number one advertiser because like, because
Thanks.
you do it so well, and that's something that I think it's a vocation. It's not very easy to get through. So, and so you just moved where you're back in Virginia, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
We
so
just
you're
moved
back.
back. Yeah.
And then are you guys having to move again? So like your husband's still in the military. How long has he been in for?
He has been in for almost 10 years, or
Wow.
just barely 10 years, I think technically. I think 9 of those have been true active duty and 1 year was a gap year, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, so we moved to Virginia a week ago, and we had been in California for the year prior. And then from 2018 to 2022, we were actually in Virginia as well. So we will hopefully be here for at least 3 years, is my hope.
I
I think,
hope don't leave me again.
I think all of us
Yeah.
are ready to have some stability and not have another cross country move or move.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So then the question I have to ask too, how did that affect you with like your personal style and having clothes, and because like when we met you were pregnant,
yeah.
and I remember, and I joke about it too, I'm like, well, Nolan's clinician held on so that we could see her for our
Yes,
graduation, and then
I
you had
did.
her the next day, then
Yes.
you had your daughter the next
I did.
day.
I did.
Yeah. So
Yes.
then like so you're packing up, you're pregnant, and then you're having the baby, you're packing up to go there, you're there, do you start buying clothes? Like, how did you start that process of
Yeah.
like accommodating to being over there?
Yeah, so I had our daughter in 2021, and then in 2022 we were moving, and that's when I found out I was pregnant with twins. And I would say for me, I think that when I am pregnant, I end up buying more clothes. And I think I'm the opposite of other people. I think in my head, I'm like, I deserve this. I am pregnant. I am, especially with pregnant with twins. I want
Yeah.
to feel cute and
Yeah.
feel, I think sometimes just, you don't feel in control of a lot, and you feel like your body is changing. And I think for me, one way to embrace those changes was, okay, I'm moving to California. I'm gonna, buy some cute maternity rompers, and I'm gonna spend a little bit more on maternity clothes, which I think a lot of people would say, why are you doing that? Because in, 9 months, you're not gonna have those. But I think for
Yeah.
me, it was important for my own well-being and confidence that I felt good when I was already in a lot of ways, balancing the change that every woman goes through when their body is growing another person.
Yeah. No, and in your case, people, there was like a couple
Yes,
people there
yes.
too. A couple people that, well, that's awesome. I've never heard that perspective before of like, you know what, I'm going all in with
Yeah.
maternity. Like, I'm doing this for me. Like, I'm doing something very special right now. And it is a treat for yourself because you were in, and then you're like moving. And, for a while you were just like your husband was working, you were at home, right? So it's also like trying to find some sort of like identity while all these changes were happening. And like when you're in the military, these changes happen so fast and you're like, here, like accommodate, start living this new life now. And so it becomes kind of like a whirlwind. So did you basically keep the maternity stuff that you had with your daughter and then use it again with the twins? Or did you like, I have twins now, so I'm gonna get more?
Both.
Both.
I definitely did both, and even still, I have them all in a box, and I don't even wanna get rid of them because I think a lot of them are really cute, and then also, I for my because I have a full-time job too, which is from home that you were talking about, and I think when when you don't leave to go to an office for work, it can feel like, at least for me, it's hard to make myself want to look nice or put on clothes, and I don't really have a lot of time. Well, I put on clothes, but you know what I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
not nice clothes.
yeah,
And so I think that I probably dressed better when I was pregnant because I think I wanted things to, "Oh, I wanna feel comfortable and I wanna show off my belly. I'm growing
yeah,
twins. That's pretty cool." And I
yeah,
felt weirdly an easier time embracing that and feeling almost more deserving of style, if that makes sense, at that
yeah,
time than maybe afterwards, which is very odd because a lot of the time during it, I would think, "Okay, I can't wait to, you know, have these babies and feel my body come back to normal and then actually be able to go shopping and get something that I like." And weirdly enough, I felt more into that when I was pregnant than afterwards. Maybe just because my time went drastically down with
yeah.
the addition of 2 newborns.
Yeah, that's awesome though. I really like that. I think that's really sweet because a lot of times with maternity, like women's bodies changing, and there's a lot of like, this is happening to me, and like I'm looking like this, and oh God, I don't feel comfortable. And you totally embraced it and took it as a
Yeah,
positive and enjoyed the maternity stuff that you had. So was it like, were you happy you had them, like you kept them? Well, you didn't really have time to like
I
think
did,
about
yeah.
losing them.
Yeah, that's a good
'Cause I
point.
remember when you messaged me and you're like,
Yeah, oh, what's happening?
yeah,
I will say that, going from Virginia to San Diego, I use that a little bit as an excuse to buy more more
yeah,
things. To be honest, I tried things that I wouldn't normally have worn if I wasn't pregnant. I kind of use that as, "Well, I can get away with this. I'm pregnant. Who's gonna come," who I can
yeah.
wear whatever
Who's
I
gonna
want.
say anything to a pregnant
Yeah,
lady?
I'm gonna
Yeah.
test this out because this isn't something I would normally wear not pregnant, but I'm pregnant and I can be more bold. I can do this. I think that that's sort of the angle that I took, whereas now I would look at something and say, "Oh, I don't think that I would look good in that. That's not really a trend that I could pull off." Where when I was pregnant, I tried it whatever I wanted.
Yeah, interesting. That's a cool perspective. But you can like wear whatever, right?
Yeah, I know, I know.
Okay.
I need to have you pick
Okay.
out some
We're
things.
having lunch soon, so then I'll talk
Yes,
to you
yes,
about
yes.
that. I'll talk to you about that. So what kind of brands were the ones that you gravitated towards? Well, because then I can promote that
Oh,
you
that's
know, to
you
clients
know
that are
what?
pregnant.
That is a good question. I would buy random this is probably not the fashion tip that I should, but I would find things off eBay that were new with tags that were brands that I wouldn't maybe normally wear, but I thought
Mhm.
maybe they would um, grow with me, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
totally.
the brand Theory,
Hmm.
I would buy things off them. Like this top is a little peplum shirt, and I could wear it when I was pregnant because it would cover my belly, but it was something that I probably wouldn't have tried before. And it was, 25% of the price because it was someone just selling their, you know,
Their stuff.
new
Yeah.
new stuff. Or so that's, and then honestly, now this is not any sort of great thing, but I love just comfortable clothing. I love Viore. I love their soft sweatpants. I love feeling
Love
comfortable.
sweatpants that are
Yes.
soft.
Yes. So
Love
I think
soft clothes.
yes, I was gonna say, I think at this point too, I think that's something that I'd love to strike a balance of, is how can I look put together and feel comfortable at the same time? That that is my biggest goal, and I have no idea how to find that balance.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm here. So like
Perfect.
I'll
Yes.
be able to
That
help
will
you
be a
with
huge
that.
next conversation. We'll be talking about Nolan's sleep and
Yeah.
my
He'll be like,
closet.
he's sleeping now. He's not torturing me anymore. Also on your closet. Let's talk about that. Let's
Yeah.
talk about that. Well, let me see here. 'Cause it was so okay. You got your, and then my other thing is, um, if you, what is some advice that you would give to to parents, um, when it's like, in the middle of the night and the baby's crying and they've just heard like, tomorrow you're going to go to a sleep consultant. Tomorrow you're going to go to the assessment. Like what kind of comforting words can you share? Because I'll tell you that night before it was for me, I was like, what are they gonna say? Like it's gonna be bad. Like he's gonna be in this thing for a long time. Like what does this look like? Oh my God, like how are we going to move forward in life? Like I can't take him out. It becomes like, me with anxiety and depression and catastrophizing pretty much anything. The night before is a very intimidating thing. So what would you, advise? What would you recommend for a parent to kind of like say to themselves before they go to sleep the night before, of like, this is
I
what you're going to face?
I would say that something that I saw the other day, that is something I truly believe, was along the lines of only good parents worry about being bad parents. So I would say that only a good mom or dad is worrying or thinking those things that you just said. Uh, and and if you're not thinking those things, it doesn't mean you're a bad parent. It might mean that
Yeah.
you just don't have a
Maybe you're
lot of
just
anxiety,
tired.
or maybe you don't have a lot of anxiety. But
Yeah.
I would also, I would say that I worry about those things all the time, and I think, or anything, when it comes to being a parent, my mind can go all sorts of places, and I think that that's pretty natural. But I also think it's important that we all remind ourselves that really there are bad parents don't worry about those things. They don't think about those things. If your focus is on your child's best interest and trying to get there and your mental health, then I think that you are doing the best job that you possibly can be doing.
Hmm.
And I think that there are times where they don't necessarily feel like they're aligning completely, because, you're using your sanity and saying, okay, I don't want to bring this child into my bed because we just got this really good routine down, but I just need to because I need sleep. There's nothing wrong with that. Your mental health is coming first, and that's great. And
Yeah.
I think that there's just no straightforward answer, except that I will say, I just don't think that bad parents think those thoughts. So if you're thinking those thoughts, then I think you can find comfort in knowing that you're doing a really good job.
Hmm. Yeah. We're all just trying to do our best and make these kids make it from one day to the next. You know what I mean? That's all we can like plan with. And it's the ups and downs and like the unknown variables that come into play sometimes, that, that's where someone like you comes in, that can just kind of help calm down and answer those questions, before people get into like going down the rabbit hole of Googling and like what could be happening, plus your own anxieties to that. And um do you like partner with like certain like with Kaiser or with any other kind of like insurance companies or anything, so that they kind of like know about you, or like how are you trying to?
That's a great question. I haven't partnered yet with any insurance company, so it has mostly been, private pay, but I try to keep my prices very reasonable.
Mhm.
Um, And I think that in the future, my goal would be to do a little bit, because right now I do mostly virtual. I've done some in person, if it's local, in California, I did a couple local consultations for head shapes and
Mhm.
OT. So if it's local, then I'm totally happy to go to someone's house and really, because it's so much better hands-on with a
Yeah.
baby. The sleep stuff you can really do over the phone or through, coming up with a plan and going over it. But really working with stretching and neck tightness and all of that is much better in person. So I think if I could establish myself a little bit more in the area, if I were to devote more time to in-home visits, then I would definitely be contracted or get contracted with insurance companies through my occupational therapy license and do it
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
But currently no, but that's a goal.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, that's how I found cranial was
Yeah.
because my doctor was like, oh, we don't like, we recommend them. We go to them. So go to them first before you like start doing your own research. Like start there. And then if you choose whatever. So it would, if I was in that situation again, like to talk to, I mean, I got to have you. So like, I know you're awesome, but for like, for anyone who's on the precipice of potentially this kind of conversation happening, um, you'd be a good place to start before you guys get in that room and they start showing price tags on you and all this kind of stuff that kind of shakes you a little bit because you're already kind of in your head about like what's happening to your kid right there, you know?
Totally. And just getting another opinion I think is helpful because, at the end of the day, you want to feel like you have knowledge. And I think my goal working at Cranial Tech and talking about helmets was I really wanted a parent to feel empowered to make the decision with all of the facts that
Mhm.
they had. And I don't necessarily know if that's every person's vantage point. And so I
Yes.
think just making sure that if you're in a situation and you're questioning what angle someone is coming at it from, then do get a second opinion, even if it's just from another clinician in that office, because I think it's important that you feel in your gut that you are making a decision with all the information, and not just given one perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super helpful because then you can kind of accept what's happening and look, I looked at pictures of Nolan the other day with his helmet and we were like, oh, it was so cute, and like
So
pictures of
cute.
him and us sleeping together and he had this helmet on and I we had like I said, we didn't tell anybody, but a friend of ours, they just walked in one day of the house and just see him with the helmet and they're like, oh, they didn't even, obviously they didn't ask, that was nice of them. But then when we took it off, they were like, "Oh, he doesn't have it anymore." And we're like, "Yeah, he had like his misshaped head." And they were like, "Really? We just thought he needed it because he bangs his head so
You're like, well, it was two birds with one stone.
exactly." And I'm like, "You're right. He does do that a lot, but no, that's not what it was for." So like, it didn't even cross their minds that it was like for anything like developmental. It was just like, "Oh, I just thought he just bangs his head a lot." So it was funny to see like that some people were just didn't even cross their minds that anything was wrong. And so that was kind of funny. And I mean, the maintenance on it and all that stuff was very straightforward, and we took it very seriously. And um, even when we were in Foley Beach, he had it
Yep.
on. Like he had it on the whole time. Like we didn't. I was very much like, no, we are not taking this off. Like we're committing to this 100%. Um, and so it was a good experience and totally recommend. So you're still working with Cranial, right? Or are you like consulting for them?
I worked PRN with them actually out in California up until, so I still worked, not full time, but a few Saturdays a month until November. Right
Hmm.
before, well, a couple months before I gave birth because I was really big with the twins towards the end. And then I'm technically still working with them, but I haven't reestablished my role there since being back because we just
Got back the week
got
before.
back. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, where people can find you is like on the Well-Rounded Baby and on your personal Instagram. And you also share a lot of like tips and stuff like that too, like
Yes,
quick
yeah,
little
and,
tips. Yeah.
I've been a little MIA because of this move, but they can also email me. My email's in my Instagram bio, and I can send you all my information, and honestly, you and, anyone that you refer me to is welcome to text me too, because I'm, very responsive, and I am not the best Instagram social media person, but I'm very responsive through email and text.
Good, good. Hey, we pick one that we're really good at.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like that's it. Because the other ones like email and whatever phone calls. It's just like we have to organize that weeks in advance for a phone call. Like that could be tough sometimes. Unless it's a fashion emergency, then I will drop everybody and be like, I gotta go because someone's calling me. They don't know what they're about to wear when they leave the house for like date night and just leave everybody. I go hide in my closet because Nolan now doesn't like me talking on the phone.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's we're into that now. We've been
Yeah.
in that one for a while where he can't see me. I have headphones I talk a lot in, and he just kind of like he's just not listening to music anymore. She's not watching anything. She's talking to
She's
someone.
talking to
And then
someone that's not me.
exactly. And then it turns into a whole thing and I have to go run and hide somewhere. So that my clients know, like I abandoned my children to talk to you guys. I leave him to go hide in a closet to make sure you look good when you leave the house. So yeah, we're in that phase now. It's been great. It's been a lot of fun. My little man is obsessed. He's obsessed, and I just like him to not be. He needs to like redirect. We're trying with the redirect too. So
Yeah. I mean, my daughter won't if I try to pump, because I'm still partially nursing and
yeah.
pumping and no mommy pump, no mommy pump, they're just she doesn't want anything to do with if I can't hold her,
Mm,
I can't be doing
totally.
anything else. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. They own us.
Yep.
These little humans just tell us what to do and terrorize us when we don't do what they tell us what to do.
Yes.
Yeah, it's such a blessing. It's such a blessing. Well, Bethany, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk to us. It was a very important conversation. I'm really happy that you were able to give us some more insight into like what you do and what well-rounded baby's about. And hope everybody reaches out to you with any questions that you have and refer other friends that have babies in these situations because you're very helpful. You're the right person to go to. And I'm so happy that we got to meet and still stay connected after all this time. And I can't wait to have lunch with you soon.
Same. Thank you so much for having me on here. You're awesome, and I really appreciate it.
Right. Thanks, guys. See you next month. Bye.